Hi again, Shaka Hislop, Honorary President of True Racism, the Red Card. And for this week's edition of our 25 for 25 podcast that we've been doing throughout the year here at True Racism, the Red Card, I'm delighted to be joined by Josh Gowling, manager of Hereford F.C.
This is 25 for 25, a Show Racism the Red Card podcast. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Josh, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on, not just because you're one of the rarities of Black managers in professional football, but I read the article that you wrote that was printed in The Guardian back end of October. I thought it was insightful. I thought it was well thought out and touched on so many of the issues outside of the game and the role that the game can play in it. What inspired that article?
Well, first of all, I'm like a unicorn, aren't I? So no, I just think obviously there's been a lot around, hasn't there? Race as of late, especially with social media and the things that have been going on. So, I thought, if I have a platform to speak out on these topics, then, I think it's right I should. I don't think enough people that have the platform do speak out for various reasons. So, from my point of view, I'm always open and honest about things. And, obviously writing for The Guardian was my opportunity just to really air my views and my thoughts around the whole situation.
I thought you drew an interesting parallel between the Black Lives Matter movement, how the rhetoric has been hijacked around that, and well, obviously, your article came out during Black History Month. How Black History Month and the Black Lives Matter movement are good shows of who we are and who we want to be, but by no means the end all. Was that? How do you see, going to a little bit further about taking of the knee and the importance or impact of it and how the rhetoric around it has been kind of hijacked?
Politicized. Yeah. I mean, people that don't want to support something will find a way of, showing a different side of it, with the Black Lives Matter movement, the political party regarding, defunding of the police and that kind of stuff. Someone will find something negative in something if they want to. But the reality is footballers didn't start taking the knee for a political movement. They started it because they just wanted equality. And that's what it was about. So, the booing from the fans and all that kind of stuff, I just, sometimes you just want to go, come on.
Yeah.
It was just bizarre. But no, I mean, yeah. For me, we played Kettering not long ago, and they take the knee. The lads asked me. For me, right now, I didn't, because I do other things that support, our movement. The reason for it to start was to highlight the issue. But for me, there now needs to be more done. So what I don't want it to become is a token gesture, and I think you've seen footballers speak about it. Zaha being one of them, feeling like not enough done, so he doesn't do it anymore. So for me now, look, the reality is, if people want to change it, for me it's quite simple, and that is talking about education. It's talking about Black history, the real Black history, not slavery. Because I'm mixed race. I have a white mum, I have a Black dad. And when I went to school, like I spoke about, I learned half of my history. I learned about kings, queens, colonialism, how we went and conquered, how amazing the country was, all the inspiring things that we did. But then I look at my Black side and all I hear about is slavery. And that there was nothing before it, there was nothing after it. We were just slaves. So for me, when we talk about unconscious bias, when we talk about institutional racism, when we talk about respect for a culture, we need to start teaching young children at schools in the curriculum about real Black history and about what it was like before. So, I spoke at length about, Timbuktu and the amazing universities there, and they had astrology, and before Galileo did all the stars and the constellations, they already had the scriptures and everything in Timbuktu. So black people were civilized. Black people went traveling around the world. When Christopher Columbus went traveling, he stumbled upon the Americas, and there was black people there that had traveled from Africa. But we don't hear about any of that stuff. All I heard about as a young mixed race guy was that my ancestors were slave bought and sold and owned by a different race. So, and I look at kind of your respect for yourself and your culture, and how can another culture have respect for you when you go to school, there's no racism at school, everyone's equal. So there's a white kid and a black kid, and you go to school, and then all of a sudden this white child learns about kings, queens, colonialism, then all of a sudden their self-worth goes like that. And then you've got the black kid at school, and all he hears about is he was owned and he was a slave. So all of a sudden his self-worth starts going like that. And then you leave school, and then you've got these unconscious biases. So until we really sit down and change the curriculum at schools and really teach proper history, then we're always going to have this problem.
I couldn't agree more, and it's something we've been advocating for, especially as an education and charity, about how we make greater impacts within schools, because that's where we feel we make the greatest inroads into these unconscious biases and inequalities that you speak of. But let me just get back to football for just a moment, and something again you touched on in your article about Marcus Rashford and his impacts that go well beyond the game. Is that something you'd like to see footballers, or indeed the game itself, be more involved with, how we make greater impacts in our communities away from our football stadiums?
Yeah, I think it's important. We are obviously role models, of course. Football is working class, isn't it? So, and that's the reality of it. So a lot of us, including myself, come from underprivileged backgrounds. So, we know what it feels like out there. We know the opportunities that are not there. So we're in a privileged position where, we've fought, scrapped to get where we are. So now we need to bring the next generation through. So it's really important that we use our platform to guide the next generation through and open doors for the next generation, like the generations like yourself before me did that. So I think that's really important. But, I look at the thing with social media at the moment, and the racial abuse that's going on social media. Now, I'm not going to name players, but they've been racially abused. Now it's time that they hold those fans to account. It's about time that we start seeing those players going to court, taking these people to court, and really, really having some justice. Because we can speak about, social media and we should censor social media. But the reality is those thoughts are always there. Yeah. It's just that they don't, many years ago, they didn't have the platform to do it. Now they do. So just because you take the platform away doesn't mean those thoughts are still not there. So it's important that we bring people to account, and, have the opportunity with the platform they have to bring these people to account for their actions.
I couldn't agree more. And just kind of building on that theme around Marcus Rashford and his impacts, while it's not new. Black players have always had these outsized influences in their own communities. They've always been involved, though a lot of times it's gone unnoticed. But a lot of times the roles we've played within the game as players, as advocates outside of the football stadiums, hasn't always translated to positions such as the one you enjoy. We're still desperately underrepresented in terms of black managers within the game.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your own path to becoming manager of Hereford FC and how those pipelines can be better developed.
I think for me, I can't sit here and talk about, racism and when I went for my first job interview and got my first job.
Yeah.
So, I was fortunate enough at the time, the chairman of my football club had been in the army, had fought for equality within the army. So he saw me as Josh. Of course, I'm mixed race, and people that say they don't see colour, we are. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, but he just saw me and my credentials and what I could bring to the party. And that's why I got the opportunity. And I was fortunate in the opportunity because the manager before me hadn't done so well and they didn't want to spend the money. So I was an easy pick. So that also helps. But, I think for me, I looked at my career and the way I was treated at times, and you know, you would have heard it many times. I would speak up sometimes, and other black players would speak up sometimes, and at times they were seen as a bit of a disruption. Whereas my white counterpart, when they would speak up, it was more, he's the captain, he's a leader, he wants what's best for the team.
Mm-hmm.
And also describing me, I was quick, strong, athletic. Well, some debate whether or not I was quick, but I was. But I was quick, strong, athletic. That was it. Whereas someone else reads the game well, he understands the game, he talks well, he's got football intelligence. And when you start having those rhetorics and those words, those descriptions of a player, how is a chairman then going to look at a black player and think, well, he reads the game, he understands the game, and give him an opportunity? It's probably not going to be there. So for me, I looked and I decided very early in my 20s that I was going to do a degree in psychology. I was going to do my governance qualification with the PFA. I was going to do my counselling qualifications so that my CV stood out against someone else that has just got a football background along with my coaching badges. So I decided to go that route. And for me, the way I look is not going to stop me being successful. And if I've got to break down doors and I've got to work twice as hard, and let's be real about it, a black person growing up in this country, when they're raised by their parents, the first thing is told is you've got to work twice as hard as the next person. And I understand that, and I'll do that, and I'll work twice as hard to get there. Should it be like that? No. Should there be more paths open to us? Yes. Should there be rules like the Rooney rule in place? No. Because the reality is you should get the job based on your credentials and how good you are. Now, the Rooney rule is a bit of a hard one for me because I get it puts people in place, and I understand the idea of contact. So the more contact you have with someone from a different race or whatever, the more you understand that you're similar. But for someone like me that's worked hard all my life, I don't feel like I should just get a job interview because of the colour of my skin. I feel like I should get a job interview on merit. And if people don't think there's a problem, then there clearly is a problem, because we've got to bring things like this into place. We've got black coaches going in to work with the FA in England to give them an opportunity to see elite sports. That shouldn't be the case, but it is the case, and that's where we are. So people like myself have got to be successful to change the narrative, and hopefully I can bring people through as well that make a difference. But it all comes back to the same thing, and it comes back to that unconscious bias, and that comes from young. That comes from what we're taught and how we perceive each other. And until that changes, we're going to be having this conversation in another 10, 20 years, like we have done 10, 20 years before.
Is that a pressure you feel to be successful? And the reason I ask this is I spoke with Les Ferdinand last year, who, as you may know, is the only black director of football in professional football in England. And I remember reading an article, Ian Wright, saying that Les had to be successful if there was to be another black director of football, because if he isn't, the rhetoric will then become black people cannot be involved in the game at this level, which Les, when I spoke with, I agreed with. He felt that was kind of the mantle that he was carrying. Is that a pressure that you feel?
First we have to look at what you just said, and that is, if Les doesn't do well, then can a black person have that role? What is the difference between Les Ferdinand and Alex Ferguson?
Well, exactly, and that's the point.
This is my problem. I listened to an interview on Talk Sport a while ago, and I'm not going to mention the person that it was, but they were talking about why were there not black coaches? Why were there not black managers? And the person said, because they just might not be good coaches or good managers. Why? What, do we think any different than someone else? We think exactly the same. And that, when you talk about unconscious biases, that is it. But no, I don't feel the pressure. And the reason why I don't feel the pressure is because I can't concentrate on that. Because if I concentrate on that, it takes me away from what I'm trying to do, which is be a successful manager in my own right. Not black, not white, just be a successful manager. And when I get there, I know that by doing that will open doors. And, I'll do myself a disservice, I'll do the football club a disservice if every decision I make, I am consciously thinking about the fact that if I don't do well, I'm going to let black people down or mixed race people, whatever culture down, because then I'll start second guessing myself. So for me, from my point of view, I just concentrate on being the best manager I can be and the best person I can be. And if I can open doors along the way by doing that, then fantastic.
And you say you're not really a fan or an advocate for the Rooney Rule as it exists. What then can be done to improve the pipelines between becoming?
No, I don't say I'm not a fan. What I mean is, it's for somebody that works hard, you know, and does all the right things and studies and does all this stuff and has had a plan in place for however long, same as loads of other black people. It's a bit degrading that there has to be something like that in place.
Yeah.
But I do understand the benefits of it. And I do understand that by getting more black people in front of owners, you know, managers, I understand the value of that. The biggest thing for me is contact. You know, we look at this thing and I look at this thing, football in the community, and we go out in the community and we teach kids in the community, great. But are we educating the coaches? So, you know, there's communities in London that are Jamaican communities. Are we educating those coaches about the Jamaican culture? No. So why would a Jamaican parent want to bring their child into a predominantly white environment? And it just doesn't work. So until we're going to put things in place to educate ourselves on communities, which then all of a sudden, what we realize then is with that contact, with that education, we understand that actually we're all the same. So then an owner of a football club recruits like for like. So he recruits in what he sees in himself in his manager. Now, if he's had no contact with a Caribbean, African, whatever community, why would he recruit? Why would he recruit based on that? So until we get the big wigs to educate themselves more, till we get the coaches and the managers to educate themselves more around cultures, we're going to have this issue. You know, we're doing it at the moment in Hereford. So, you know, I've spoken to the police because the police is a big thing with the community at the moment. And we spoke about how do we bridge that gap? How do we get that kind of positivity back within the community? How do we, as a football club, as a hub, bring the community in? Because we've got a very small, you know, ethnic minority background in Hereford. So what I want to do is bring those into the community, bring them into the football club, celebrate, you know, days, festivals, all that stuff. So we can bring a culture of people together from different places and really build a community. And we need to do more stuff like that.
There's been a lot of focus on the Euro 2020 final. Obviously, 3 black players missing penalties and the reaction to it. What do you remember or how do you remember that penalty shootout and the resulting racism and abuse that they experienced, and how can football better prepare and better deal with those issues as they exist today?
Yeah, I mean, when the first one missed, I think who was the first miss? Was it?
I think the first was Rashford. Was Rashford first?
And I mean, he missed, and I just thought, oh no. And then obviously when
you were Sancho and then Saka.
And then when Saka,
that's
Saka was last, and I just thought, obviously you can never predict the way penalties are because they're a lottery, but I just thought, why are you letting him go last?
Right.
When you know what's gone on, the way things are in this country, why? And you know that it's very weird because if he scores, he's a hero.
Mm-hmm.
But he missed, and he's black this, black that. Get out of this country, go back to where you come from. And it's just, you can't reason with idiots, can you? That's the reality.
Yeah.
But, you know, for me, and I think probably for every black person out there that understands, we knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the saddest thing of it all, was that we knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And it was great that the community got around him and them to support them. But, you know, that shouldn't need to happen. But the reality is, it's a societal issue, isn't it? You know, you hear John Barnes speak about things from time to time about society, and it's not a football issue, it's a societal issue. And I think that's right. And that's the reality of it. And I know I keep going on about it, but it comes back to educating. And, you know, you can go into schools and you guys can go into schools and talk about, you know, racism and all that stuff. But the reality is they're going home, some of them, to racist parents.
Mm-hmm.
And who are they going to listen to, you or their parents? they're going to listen to their parents. So then the cycle continues. So until the powers that be, government, really want to make a real change, we're going to have this. So that's why, you know, when you look at Rashford, the change he made and the pressure he put on the government with the free school meals to do that, and the things that Sterling have done, you know, at some point we've got to band together as a football community and go, you know what, we want real change. We don't want token gestures. We don't want Black History Month, because the reality is the West Indies came to this country after the war to rebuild the country. Mm-hmm. They did that. They were part of this history, you know, and until we start teaching that, then we're going to have these problems. So, as you know, football makes a lot of money for this country. It's a money turning industry, you know, and the reality is money speaks in this world, in this economy. So for me, until we start getting together as a football community and going to the government and saying, this is what we want on the syllabus, we want these things taught. Because we've done all these things over the years, over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they only go so far. They're papering over the cracks. And that's what we're doing at the moment. We're papering over the cracks. And the problem is, the longer we leave it, the next generation comes through, and then we have the same problem. And then the next generation comes through and we have the same problem. So until we get together and say, look, we're not having it anymore. This is what we want. This is what we expect moving forward. We don't want a Black History Month. We want Black History taught at school on a regular basis. You know, I was at school, I was learning about cowboys and Indians.
Right.
What is that for me? What I would like to learn about is, you know, you look at Egypt. When you look at Egypt, what's depicted in Egypt? White pharaohs. Mm-hmm. Egypt's in Africa. Mm-hmm. So there are black kings, queens, pharaohs in Africa. You don't see that. So I want to see that stuff, and that's what we need to be teaching in schools about the real history of the Black culture, to give more respect, one, for ourselves, but also for white people to have respect for Black people. So then all of a sudden, the unconscious bias then slowly gets on an even playing field to see that actually Black people are intelligent. Actually, Black people did own businesses. Actually, Black people were kings and queens. Then we all look the same. And then that unconscious bias slowly fades away. And until we do that, we're just going to keep having these same problems.
I fully understand exactly what you're saying, and given the role that football can play in driving so much of this social change and governmental policy. Josh, I'd like to thank you for your time. It's been insightful. It's been revealing. It's certainly given us as an organization a lot to think about. In particular, in that last point you just hit on, how can we as a game come together in a way that better impacts policy? It's something that we've tried to do as an organization, but how can we rally the entire game of football, given this strength, given this popularity, in moving so many of these issues forward? I have a feeling this is not going to be the last time we speak, Josh. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I could go on and on. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate the example that you are. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.